Maybe down by the ferry. They don't know where we're at. We have to call them here. So as loud as possible. We may still be calling people from other states, so you really got to belt it out there.
So it's on 3, localize this, and then your mating call. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Localize this!
Is that good enough?
Is anybody else hot and bothered like that?
Maybe they all cancel each other out.
It's got some of that. Oh, okay. Is this for like anchory type things?
What?
So we have them all of ours are loops with the double fisherman. Oh. Well, this yellow one.
Oh, that's it's right.
But yours, you want to hold this side up. Like hold it like this.
I've done it with a single before, and I have mixed
So
feelings about it.
this is exactly how you want to step into it, like this.
Through here.
Yeah, through here. Go.
Okay. Yeah.
It's fine. All right, yours.
So, looking at your slings here. So I don't know how to
Yeah, we're gonna go through these points. So you come in this here. That go under.
Alright, it's been a while, but there we go. Like everything? All double back,
Yeah.
locks. That's already flipped over,
Yeah, because once you weight it, it's pulling from the top. It is actually very static.
Is it?
It's like
I'm just not
ultra
used to standing on ropes close to the ground, I guess.
Yeah, you should try at some point climbing with like. I like to have a short foot loop so that I don't have to slide up really high to get a big step up, and then a longer lead foot loop so
Yeah, I
that.
saw her setting that up that way,
Yeah.
and that was different. What I'm used to.
It's all about preference, but
I'll give it a try.
I think it's worth it.
I like trying new things. What we're here for.
When I get back, I want to see about going to college.
So we refer to that as, so it's screwed, so it's down and out.
So maybe go up one. Yeah, go up one or two more, and then set up your descent stuff.
That thing up to the helmet.
Yep.
All right. This is why he had the big fatty ATC.
Uh huh.
Mine doesn't like this size of rope. safety. So if both of my safety goes out, and my 1 parameter,
Alright, so it's okay for me to take all this off?
You're not going to take it off, but I would take your feet out of, or at least take it so that, take the weight off of it so you can slide it up. You want your ATC like in its working position.
Yeah.
What are y'all
It is.
wanting to do right now?
Oh, no, it's not. Like working position is like when it's gonna be like sitting.
Oh, up. I got you.
Alright.
I see what you're saying.
Do the same.
Exactly.
Got it?
Yeah. Yeah, and then make sure that when it's in that position, the gate is facing down and out rather than towards your belly where it's gonna try and unscrew itself.
Oh, well, it's...
So when it's weighted, like when you're actively using it, the gate's gonna be facing in towards you. And you wanna turn it around so it's not doing that.
Got it.
Exactly.
There you go.
Cool. So if you're into that thigh wrap,
Go ahead.
you can stand up and get your weight off of your lead pressing
Off the lead one.
so that you'll be holding your weight with your with your ATC. Okay.
I've bouldered a lot, but not blade devices before. No, I haven't. Okay, so this has an 8 on it, not the ATC. Okay. I like the 8. I have.
Alright, A, B, C, D devices.
Yeah, my girlfriend's aunt just hooked me up with a bunch of climbing gear. Yeah, I just need to get a harness and
I'm not into that actually.
Yeah, I would think the more you wrap your body around it, it's gonna like be more complex. I would just keep your right hand applying downward pressure below it.
Have you guys ever used a climb heist backup on this? Because then you can go hands-free without a wrap.
Sure. There are different things people do. I don't.
Okay. It can make rappelling a pain in the butt.
I just keep my right hand on it and then
And then loosen this.
yep. And now loosen the foot as well.
Now you take the foot off, maybe.
So you're ready to go.
And then am I taking it down with me?
Yeah, you're taking them both down with you. So loosen them up nice before you get going so that you don't have to like death grip them both. Like, remember there's like kind of V over the top of them.
Why am I not just
Because if you get knocked unconscious, you're gonna let go of your ATC and you're gonna die. Or if your friend's like, hey, check it out, and you're like, oh, hey, I didn't pay attention to what I was doing. Just like we always have more than one safety, more than one thing attaching us to the line.
Clark,
Yeah.
are you helping both of them?
He is.
I'm down.
Pretty good. You're pretty good.
You know, hey, video support, we need you to hold this door, man. You know? Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, that's huge.
Yeah.
You gotta run through your action plan, your what ifs, your plan A, your plan B, where you're escaping to if you need to escape, or where you're meeting up, because the thing that needs to happen after an action, the most important thing, and the role that you need to figure out before you go into the action, is who is the facilitator, who is the debriefer, who's calling the team back together after you're burnt out, you're exhausted, maybe you just got out of jail, who's the person who's pulling the team together twice. Once right after the action to make sure people's safe, and then a second time to let the people who are in jail also be part of a debrief. Did the action work? What worked, what didn't work? If we do actions and we don't debrief our actions, we never grow, right? We don't know how to grow and improve if we don't do a critique of our own actions. I guarantee you, if you don't pick that role ahead of time, it's really hard to actually get the team back together because people do get exhausted afterwards. Yeah, that's kind of a post thing. The debriefer, because it's a rough role of forcing people to get back to a meeting, can also be the one in charge of a party. You can trick them. Tell them it's a celebration party, but first you're going to debrief and check in.
Yeah. Oh, so that's how that's I never knew that.
Decompression party. Decompression party. Yeah. Yeah. Bring food. Bring food.
Up.
So
I
that's
didn't know that.
decompression party.
I've been getting scammed all this time. I had no idea that's what's going on.
Your legal team post-action is really important. This could be the jail support person, but as soon as people get out of jail, you write up everything that happened to you. You put a date on it, you sign it, and you get that to your attorney, because I guarantee you, whatever you think, you will remember. In an action, between the action and court dates are very far apart. And you were adrenalized while you were in the action, and you're not generally adrenalized in court, so the memories don't line up. So post-action, legal team, take photographs, document, write things up. Kind of same with, get that together. And then, of course, the action is not over until everybody's out of jail and done with their court case, right? So you can't just be like, oh, those other people who got arrested, we don't need to support them anymore, right? That affinity group's action is not done until everyone's done dealing with their court stuff. And that might be doing fundraisers and making sure that somebody could travel with them if it was an out-of-state action and go back to jail to support them, so they have a support person during that. So again, this comes back to recruitment and retention. If you want people to work with you again, you take care of them when they go through this arrest process.
All you talk about is as far as jail support goes is now you have the post-action jail support with people that are. And sometimes those could be some of the greatest parties ever. The party outside of the actual jail support. And I'll tell you one thing that I used to have so many complaints about Occupy Chicago, but the one thing that they had right was jail support. It'd be the police would be so angry because all these people are out there partying, waiting, and as the people come down, everybody's, yeah! And then, and people that weren't even involved in the action, the DUI or something. We're like, yeah! And it's out there all night long. And that kind of also sends a message to the system, like, no matter what, you can't break us. We're gonna not only we're gonna come after you, but when you put us in jail, you're actually helping facilitate our party. And then food is out there and people are having a good time. So that's pretty important to set the jail support like that and not leave until everybody's out.
I want to really quickly get everybody. We're gonna go outside the tent and we're gonna grab a buddy. And I just want to grab somebody they don't know, and this has to be a relatively quick process. But I'm just gonna tell you what we're gonna do first. Okay, wait, everyone freeze. Really quickly, we're going to do a listening exercise. You're going to hear me screaming at you a lot. I'm going to say start, stop a lot. But what's going to happen is person A, you just decide who you are. I'm going to trust you all. We're going to be able to do this fast. Person A is going to speak for 1 minute about their fears of doing direct action. When I say stop, person B is going to tell person A what they heard them say. I'm going to yell stop and interrupt them too, probably. And then I'm going to say switch. And then person B is going to talk about their fear of doing direct action for a minute, and then when I say stop, person A is going to tell them what they heard. Okay? So it's a listening exercise. Everyone go outside, but stay in a place where you can hear me scream at you. Please.
The other part of purpose are these next 4 concepts, which is the basis of cooperation. Because of the process of building power is work, cooperation, resources, and reflection, then it's really important that we have a sense of why people are cooperating. So this speaks again to purpose. If the purpose of the power is altruistic, and it's not based on exchange, it's just based on I'm sharing with you because you're a human being, and I see you as equal to me, and I believe that together we should each have more power, then that's a transformational basis of cooperation. And so this is when you're asked to be a part of a movement, not because it's going to get more for you, but because it's going to make a difference for everyone, for the whole world, for the community. But we could also choose a different basis for power, which is based on self-interest or exchange. And so this would be, if let's say I was a union organizer and I said to you, join this union because you'll make $5 more an hour. Now that's an important reason to do something because some folks need $5 more an hour, but it's really different because that's transactional. the United Workers didn't ask people to join to make more money. In fact, those 14 folks that had committed to go on a hunger strike, none of them currently worked at the stadium. All of them at that point were past workers at the stadium, and they weren't going to get a pay increase. They were doing it because they believed that everyone had a right to be treated with dignity and that poverty was an affront to human dignity. And so it was about this transformative basis for cooperating and being engaged and making these sacrifices together. And so if we draw a circle and its purpose is sharing, and then the basis is transformation, then I think that moves us towards the type of social movement that can actually create the type of change that's needed. And then there's two other questions to ask, and that is it going to be universal or individual? So if it's going to be universal, then the reason we're cooperating with others is because we believe everyone should benefit. And so the transformation is for everyone, and it benefits everyone. Or we could say that it's for cooperation for others for the benefit of the select few. So this might be the few people in your union. This might be the few people in your class or in your in your neighborhood. It might be the few people in your family or few individuals that you've pointed out. And so if you are asked to join a cause because it's going to benefit a few, including you, and it's going to have a transactional benefit, and it's going to build power so you can control others, then that creates a different purpose than if your purpose is to share power, which will expand the total power that everyone with whom you're sharing it has, to create altruistic, not exchange-based, transformational change on a universal basis to include everyone. Now you have a circle that creates a set of constraints. The work that I do, and what's essential to all the work that I've done, and all of the social movement work that I've done, is that it's been building power through sharing on an absolute basis for universal good based on transformative values, respect, dignity, sanctity of human life, and then that it be universal, not individual. And so if we have this first circle or purpose identified, then it becomes this question of understanding power. And so once again, this is our outer limit. So right now, the power that we have is not the power that we need to see our purpose fulfilled, so there's a gap there. And that gap is what we need to fill. And so the power that we have is here. And so this question of how much power we have and how do we measure it is pretty straightforward, actually. You just look at what you do. So I'm going to give a concrete example. 3 years ago, I was at this camp, at Localize This. And the power that I had then was to send out flyers to all the child care centers in Vancouver and invite people to go to workshops. And actually, 3 years ago, about this time, those flyers had just gone out. And they cost about $150, and I had paid for that out of my own pocket and mailed the flyers out. And then a few months later, 15 people came to the first workshop. And that workshop happened, and at that workshop, people came and we made a meal together because we had the power to make a meal together. Everyone donated $20, which paid for the room and paid for the food, and we had a conversation. And the conversation was about how to build a movement to transform childcare. That's the power that we had at that point. And that was the first step. And we didn't have any more power. And so that was the power that we had, and that was as far as our circle could go. So everything that happened in that moment at that workshop, though, was universal, transformative, and based on sharing. And it was really explicitly done so. The donations were all put into a pot, and then it was clearly said, this paid for the food that we're sharing, and that's it, and then for the space of this room. And then we shared in the work of making the meal together. And then we shared in a dialogue and talking about our values in transforming childcare. Now, 15 people came. I think, of the 15 who came, many, I think, came because they could get hours towards their professional development. So that was why they came. In fact, they came largely for a transactional basis. But others came because they were curious about this conversation, and they wanted to be involved in this transformation. So a year later, from those 15, it had grown to be a core of about 20 people that had come workshop after workshop throughout the course of that year. And then we had the power, those 20 people at this point, to decide what we were going to do the next year, which was to have this core group of 20 repeat the process, but for the 20 people involved in repeating the process to actually design the next set of workshops, to design the next set of flowers. And so now at this point, we had the power to have a group of 20 people like do that exercise, and we had the power of having those leaders. And so the next year, which was last year, the power that we had was to carry out those workshops with those 20 people. Now, at the same time, we also had the power to reach out to folks at the University of British Columbia and to see if there were folks interested in doing a campaign around pay equity. Same process. It started off with the power to just invite people to come together and have a dialogue, which doesn't seem like a lot of power. But at that conversation, the question was asked, do you want to be part of a movement for pay equity at UBC? And so that in 2 or 3 years, every person here receives a fair wage, and we start building this movement. And so we had the power to ask that question, and then over the course of the year, we repeated the process. And so at this point, I guess 2 years into it, because this is the start of the 3rd year, now there are 35 core leaders at UBC. There are 20 core leaders not at UBC. We meet twice a month, once in an informal dialogue at someone's home. About 15 people come. One of about 50 people that come together to talk about changing childcare. And we also meet at UBC, and now the largest public sector union in the province is fully backing our campaign. We have a commitment by the union to support the campaign. We have 150 members, which is essentially all the members at the university, involved in the process. We are soon going to have 45 people on committees, that are actually involved in the decision making for the campaign. And we're en route to have 1,200 people come to a forum that brings people from all across the region to talk about how to expand the movement and build it to the next step. And we're building towards having thousands of people march on International Women's Day in support of childcare equity at UBC and across the province. So this is like a short, a cliff version of that, but it truly just started off when you go back 2 years to just that first flyer and that first gathering. And then inviting people to be involved for the purpose, and then building that power and building that power. And we will, I believe, very likely in March of 2013, have demonstrated the power to shift wages from 17 an hour to an average wage of 25 an hour, and to have mobilized thousands of people in support of childcare equity in the community. Because each step of the way, we build power. So there's the next part of the equation, though, which is that your circle can only go as far as the people that build the power. And so now it's this question of how do you have this power, you have this power to get 1,200 people to a forum that will be in September. You have the power to mobilize thousands of people to stand up for childcare equity at UBC. And so how does that happen? Well, it happens because there are leaders, which is what people are. And so this goes back to the quote by Paulo Freire, which is that in the quote, Freire says that it's integration of the younger generation of the logic of the present system. But I actually don't see a distinction in education across generations. I actually think that education is something that we experience at every moment in our life, from the time we were born until we die. And so the way that we build power of people is through education. And another way to think of that is through leadership development, which is what we're doing right now. We're in the process of education. We're in the process of listening to each other and talking with each other and being changed and transformed through dialogue and through contemplation and reflection. And so our power is in our capacity as leaders, as co-leaders, and that is how it is at any point in human history, at any type of social movement, that it's leaders. Now, not the leader, but all of the leaders, many leaders. One of the things about Occupy that made no sense was, to me anyways, was when people talked about it as leaderless. Because it wasn't leaderless, it was leaderful. It had thousands of leaders. Each of those leaders were involved in all of the work necessary to articulate a strong desire by millions of people across North America for an end to inequality. and for social and economic justice. And that was accomplished. It was a huge accomplishment because it was leaderful movement. It wasn't just one person or group of people at the top that were sort of directing people or controlling people. It was people sharing with each other across the whole movement their power as leaders. But people as leaders, through education, which is the practice of freedom, which is critical and creative, based in reality, on participation and transformation, which is on the other side of the or, that type of leadership development is the process by which people have the power to build the power out. And so then there's this last part of the circle. So if you look at this here, this outer circle is purpose. And I suggest that social movement power's purpose is going to be universal, transformative, and based on sharing. And then this circle here is power. And the key to power is understanding that power is the process of building power is work, cooperation, resources, and reflection. So how much work, how much cooperation, how many resources, and how much reflection we have determines the outer bounds of our power. And this is all mediated or facilitated by people, co-leaders. And then in the middle of this is the process of that. So the process is things like making meals together, creating art together, having conversations with each other, inviting people from communities to get together and to continue to build communities. It's things like paying attention to important details, like the video that we watched. It was beautiful to watch, and it combined all these different elements of light and absence of color and tone and face and music and visual imagery as core to then connecting with us and having resonance with us as we were transformed by the experience of connecting that video to what it signified to us, which is our potential to be engaged in social transformation. And so then our job as social movement organizers is to expand the process, expand the capacity of leaders, expand our power, so that all of these different circles are at the very limit of our purpose. And so if we start off here with not a lot of processes for building power, without a lot of leaders or leadership development, and without a lot of power, because we wouldn't have a lot of power if we don't have a lot of those processes and a lot of those potential leaders having been fully developed, then what we do is we expand all the way up to our purpose. As long as we don't go beyond our purpose, then we're going to build power for the purpose that we intended. And so I guess, that's the model. That's the model that I think was essential to the work that I've done when I was a social movement organizer in the United States. And it's the model that I think is essential to the work that I do in British Columbia. Every time I go about asking the question, what do we do next? I start off with, how does this fit within our purpose? Universal, transformative, and based on sharing, expansion of power. And then I ask, how does this fit within the power that we have? Is this realistic given what we can do now? Not realistic given on what I'd like to do in the future, but is it what we can do now? And then the next question I say is who's going to do this? Where are we in terms of our capacity as leaders? Like what leadership development is necessary? And then I go to the question of what processes will get us to that? What cultural elements do we need to mix together in order to develop our capacity to speak publicly or to reach out to allies or to mobilize people or to connect with people? And then out of that comes an answer for the next step. So the next step might be, the next step, like say in the campaign at UBC, is to have a leadership development program on public speaking to prepare for going out and speaking with allies. That's the next step. The next step is to expand our dialogue circles that take place in people's homes and to have more people host. And so people that want to host that want to go through a process of having conversations about how to have 12 people come into their home once a month on a Friday to have a conversation about social movement power as it connects to childcare. So then that would be the next step, and it fits within that. So I want to finish this part of the presentation and just see if there's questions that folks have before we move to the next part.
I guess my question would be, when you recognize that what you're doing is not working, what's the best way to process and to improve upon those failures and to learn from them?
So
As a
I mean,
group.
we're all going to have different answers to that,
Yeah.
but I just want to start with how I would go about it, and then maybe we can have a chance for other folks to share their answers.
Sure.
The first thing I would do is I would ask, is it not working because we're not clear about our purpose? And there's two parts to that. First, are we not clear about it? Like, are the people involved in the cause unclear? Are we being transactional, individual, and based? Because if that's the case, then it's time for some deep soul searching. Because maybe you're just buying into like bad practices from our political opponents or ideas that are coming into our space. If it's about building social movement power, I think it needs to be by definition expansion and sharing, universal and transformative. And so that's the first aspect to that of being clear, is knowing, assessing, and asking what is the purpose. And then the next part of clarity, though, is actually communicating it. So every single time that Liberation Learning meets, every single time that the Campaign for Child Care Equity at UBC meets, the values of unconditional respect, universal dignity, and shared responsibility are discussed, are focused upon, and are reflected on. Every single invitation for any person to be involved in the movement is always very explicit and very clear. It's about transforming childcare around the values of unconditional respect, universal dignity, shared responsibility. And every opportunity for someone who misunderstands that that's what it's about, and who thinks that actually it's about, that those are just nice words that we put on because they sound good, but actually what we're trying to do is just get more money in the pockets of a few. That every opportunity to break down that misconception with people that are being invited into the process is utilized. Because if the point of introduction isn't clearly and explicitly about those values, universal, transformative, and about expansion, then there's a good chance that people will come into the process who want to limit other people's power, who want to build transactions and do exchanges, have bought into this idea that human beings are we just exchange commodities and trinkets with each other, and that's what our higher purpose is. And that's a big mistake. And so there's those two parts to clarity. And I would say that before, with sort of this question of how do we assess when it doesn't seem to be going well, is the first question is to ask, is that happening? Now, after that's been assessed, then I think that the next place to go is, are we being realistic about the power that we have? So last year there was a talk that was about mobilizing, at the Localize This, there was a talk about mobilizing hundreds of thousands of people around immigration reform. And I started walking through that process, and there was a comment that the man who was giving that presentation, he said, people wanted to talk about like a general strike, he says, well, general strike's great, but who in the United States has the power for a general strike right now? And the answer, I think, right now is nobody. So if you're mobilizing for a general strike right now, you're kind of like a few steps ahead of where you want to be. And so it'd be better to go back and say, if I think a general strike would be a really important tactic and fit into an important strategy, where do I go all the way back to the first step to get there? But I think that we often don't take small enough steps. And so then we find that basically our measure for our success is, did this step get us all the way to where we want to go, as opposed to get us to the next place so we can go to the next place. So does that kind of answer what you're asking?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So now I want to open up to other folks too that want to reflect either on what I had just said or on that question before another question is raised. So you're going to have to self-facilitate because I'm not actually there and I can't see everyone. Someone else would like to speak to what I just spoke about before we go to the next question. I think that would be nice.
Okay.
Sometimes we are attached so much to the end results that we forget that the most important part of this process is planting seeds. And I feel like a lot of people get overwhelmed or they get burnout because they are attached to these end results. And they all see that, and they don't see the little steps that they do, planting seeds and expanding and educating. And eventually that end result would come to the form that is not even foreseen by that person. Sometimes I feel like by us choosing what is the end result going to be, we are kind of pigeonholing ourselves and put us in a little cage, and we are asking maybe for too little or maybe too big, as we said. So by just detaching ourselves from the end results and just focus on what the purpose is on planting seeds, I feel like eventually, just like that flyer you sent, and that's exactly what I just did. I sent a flyer on doing social forum for my community, and it went from 10, and now I have 25 people coming regularly. So that's planting seeds.
And I want to just add to that too, that I think we really minimize what it means when there's 1 million people doing forums, like what you just described and what I described. That if all people who share the same vision of human beings as being sacred and worthy of dignity and respect, if all we did was once a week, we invited 12 people to our homes and we talked about how to transform our world, that transformation, like, it actually happened. like the end result is right there, and that's pretty amazing. And so that I think sometimes we tend to think that we're not making much difference, when in fact we're making a huge difference. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in wanting it to be something that can be measured by, X number of people were mobilized on this day, or X law was changed. But like Bill said at the introduction, that's not, that what we need to focus on are those processes of human beings realizing their fullest potential. And when human beings realize their fullest potential, the transformation is within people, and then the purpose is fulfilled.
Woo. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Josh.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to a question about May Day and doing all the little steps that you have to do to build a general strike. I was really active with Occupy for, I guess Occupy Seattle since the end of September, I think, is when I got involved. And when it came to calling for a general strike, I was one of the people that was a voice at the General Assembly saying it takes a lot of hard work. There's a lot of steps involved. We have to build to that. And there seemed to be I think 90% of the people at the General Assembly were totally pissed at me for this. People that just absolutely loved me, thought I was the bee's knees, couldn't believe me, and actually were furious that I would suggest that we not call for a general strike. And I thought it was very childish, and I ended up really that was like my last General Assembly. And there was this idea in the room from a lot of people that if we would just dream that it could happen, that if we just wished it would happen, it would happen, and that we didn't actually have to do this hard work of sitting down with hundreds of people over all these different, meetings and discussions and forums, and to get all of the different locals on board and to get all the different groups in the city engaged in this, that it would just happen. So I was kind of flabbergasted by that. I'm glad you mentioned that when you were talking about building power.
I just want to say, here's a really important aspect of what you just said, because it really resonates with me, especially sort of what you said about how it felt and being involved in that process and that conversation. And I think it's important. I mean, one of the tactics that we're using now that's really helped in Vancouver is that we're really explicit. When it's called a dialogue, it's not to make a decision, and no decisions will be made in a dialogue. And then we also have what we call our meetings, and at meetings we make decisions. And it's allowed us to have a space where people can talk about really big ideas. What the sort of what we want to have accomplished in 20 years, without having that pressure to make a decision. And then about half the times we meet now are explicitly just, we start with an opening question, and then the conversation can go anywhere, and we don't have an end time. And then when we have meetings, they actually start and end on time, and they have a set agenda. And there's a process for people to be involved and to have the participation be really wild. And I think that's really helpful, because a part of the General Assembly that you're talking about, what makes it so powerful is it is a dialogue. And so you or anyone in that dialogue is changed by having this exchange, even if it feels really frustrating. And that change that has happened to thousands of people, tens of thousands of people in North America over the past year by having been in General Assembly conversations, just like the one that you talked about, is carrying with us. So we're actually holding that change within us. And so the transformation and the power that we have now is greater because more of us have been involved in these conversations than we would have been had the Occupy not have happened. And I think that this is really important to keep in mind. If you look about what's happening in Quebec, so opponents to the movement in Quebec will say that the elections are going to happen in Quebec and the student movement's going to lose, and that the current government that's sort of imposing these austerity measures and this increase in tuition are going to get reelected because they did an election in August, like before Labor Day. And so it's pretty predictable that they'll say, well, then it didn't work. But they're missing the point that if you have 10,000 people in a province, in a community, meeting and talking about how to create social change for a year, and you have 250,000 people in the street every month, well, everyone's been changed. So in 20 years, the communities can be totally different because that happened, in the same way that everyone's changed through the General Assemblies. And I think that we have to own that accomplishment, that it is huge, that kind of change is happening, and it has happened, and then it's really big. And then the next question is, what do you do with that? Well, the group of people that want to see a general strike because you think that may be important, they think that may be important. Those individuals should start meeting in their home and talking. If we're going to be able to have a general strike, let's say we think it's realistic to happen in 10 years, which is not very long in sort of history, like it's a blip in history. But it may be possible for our community to do that. So what would be the concrete steps that would happen? And then you just go through the process. You say, we think it's possible to have a general strike in 10 years. And this is what it's going to take. And you work backwards from a general strike would require that there be 500 people in the community as sort of leaders in this process, organized, in this way. And then you go all the way backwards until you figure out the next step that you're going to do tomorrow in order to get to that point in that process. Now you may find out that what you did was plant seeds along the way, and you don't do a general strike, but you're still going to have developed all of those leaders along that process. And so it's worth it. And so I think it's important that we have to remember that sometimes we're just talking with each other. Sometimes we're connecting with people with different viewpoints and different ideas and different passions. And sometimes we're with a group of people who want to work on one project for 10, 15 years with us. And they're going about that project and that process. And these things are all happening in parallel, simultaneously, intersecting, overlapping. That's a social movement.
So eager and ready to do that and have been for like forever. So yeah,
5 to 10,000 people is not it's more than
If they don't know bath salts.
beef work that day. I think like
What would be
Thought I lived in a place that was fire.